Welcome back to Life Without Secrets. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a guest who has turned adversity into opportunity and developed a wealth of knowledge on both personal growth and professional success. Jean Klinkhamer is a seasoned real estate investor and mentor who's passionate about helping others overcome obstacles and achieve financial freedom. With decades of experience in real estate and a knack for turning challenges into stepping stones, John brings a unique perspective on resilience, growth, and creating a life you truly love. In this episode, we'll explore strategies for finding your unique abilities, building passive income, and navigating life's toughest moments with strength and purpose. Whether you're interested in real estate, personal development, or simply looking for inspiration to tackle your own challenges, this conversation is packed with actionable insights you won't want to miss. So let's dive in. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me today, Jillian. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. I'm actually really excited to dive into your story. We were kind of chatting before. I know a little bit about it, but I don't know all the details. So
Mm.
I'm actually myself just as interested as our listeners today. And I just want to thank you for coming on and being willing to get vulnerable with us and also just share some things that you've learned as well.
Yeah, happy to. You bet.
Yeah. Well, I feel like your journey is really a powerful testament and of resilience, growth. So, could you start by telling us about some challenges that you faced and how those experiences have really shaped you in your life and career?
Yeah, yeah, you got it. Well, I know you're a trauma nurse and you're passionate about that. So when I think about what has shaped me, I had a moment of trauma, a pretty serious accident about 12 years ago, and it completely changed my life, like just changed so much about my life and helped me. So I'll start there because that's the
Yeah.
moment for sure. It was a accident on a lake. We were water skiing with a boat. And my family, my wife and I, and our two children, they were 10 and 8 at the time, and then a couple a little younger than us that we were had a new friendship with. And so we're together on the boat. I was driving and everybody had water skied. And at the very end of the day, this new friend said he'd be willing to drive me. And I was like, I'd love to take a little water ski before the end of the day. So I enjoy a beautiful little sunset water ski. And right as I'm kind of finishing up and the boat's coming around to pick me up, it got knocked by two waves, kind of just perfect storm of timing, where the boat got knocked out of control and everybody got knocked around the boat. Thankfully, nobody got knocked out of the boat, but the driver is no longer in control of the boat. He's away from it. And by the time he gets back control, the boat's already on top of me. And
Mm,
so it hits me. And at first I thought, oh, okay, well, all right, I'm still here. But then I realized I couldn't breathe
mm.
and I saw blood in the water.
Oh,
So I
wow.
was absolutely convinced in that moment this was the end of my life. That's just what I felt, and I had a profound short conversation with God where I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm coming home. Like this is it. God, I'm coming to you." In hindsight, later in the hospital, I realized there was something instead of terrible about that, there was something positive about that. I had a lot of peace about going to be with God and why, and but and so that was very comforting on one level, and I think in one sense it took away a fear of death in my life to be a little less
Mm.
afraid of death because I had faced it. On the other hand, I looked at the boat, I see my wife, I see my children, and I literally had the thought, my daughter is like 8 years old, and I had this thought and conversation with God, "God, I'm okay to come to you, but I'd really like to stick around." In fact, I
Mhm.
thought of her wedding and I thought, "God,
Mm.
I'd really love to be at her wedding. Would it is that even possible?" You know? And then to be very frank, I know you appreciate secrets and just honesty. I'm cussing like a sailor
Mhm.
and I'm yelling, call 911. I think I'm dying. And, and then my friend hauls me into the boat and is kind of holding me together. And I'm gonna get very vulnerable now. This is embarrassing to admit, but my priority system, after I knew that 911 was called, my next priority was, is my penis still there? Because my bathing suit was cut up. And I thought, and so my wife gives me a lot of grief about that to this day. And my friend, actually, I had him check and I get teased a ton. And in the hospital, I got teased mercilessly because
I'm
of course there's
sure.
stories circulating on. So my friends and family are just mocking me nonstop about my priority system. Um,
Yeah, I always say, like, "Which head are we thinking with, honey?"
yeah, 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 yeah. So I had a month in a hospital. I had 9 surgeries. They
Wow.
had to rebuild my ribs. They had to rebuild my lungs. They had to pull
Wow.
stuff out of me and then debride my leg muscle. My leg almost got amputated, and they ended up moving a muscle from my back into my leg to rebuild it. I didn't even know that was a thing and possible, but they did it. And let me just say this to nurses, to you, Jillian, and to nurses
Mm,
who are listening, or people who might be married to nurses or support them. What an incredible profession you guys have. The care that I received and my family,
mm,
my wife from our nurses was life changing, absolutely
mm.
life changing, certainly physically and medically, but even just support and navigating it and emotionally, what we're going through. It was incredible. I'm so thankful for
Wow.
nurses. And one specific story, um, doctors were I had two doctors, specialists who were arguing about which surgery to do or why or whatever. And we were getting two different stories. And I kept telling them, and my wife did, please go get your stories together. Come back and tell me unified what's best. And they
Mhm,
wouldn't do
mhm.
it. Right. So now it's decision time, and the doctors aren't giving us a clear answer. And well, two things about this nurse. All the nurses were amazing, but one really rose to the top. She advocated for me at night. She was my day nurse, and then she would advocate, here's who's caring for you tonight. And she'd sometimes say, hey, I'm not getting you this person. You need to stay away. Like, this is the nurse you need for tonight. So she's advocating for me. And my wife knew that she was just the best nurse we had seen there. And so in this medical decision, my wife grabs her after the doctors leave. She grabs her. She goes, follows her out, because she wouldn't say anything in front of the doctors, but she follows her out and she asks her, what would you do? You see this stuff. And she was super clear. I would do this 100%. I see all these surgeries. I see the outcomes. I would do this. And I was so grateful for that, for
Mm.
her kind of experience and care. Um, Anyways, thank you to nurses. You
Wow.
guys are
Yeah.
amazing.
It's a hard job, but, like, and I'll be honest, oftentimes, like, we don't get to hear the story like that at the end.
Mhm.
And working in the ER, for instance, it's hardly ever that we get to see that person again, and oftentimes that the person going through the traumatic event,
Mm,
our brain protects us, and so oftentimes we don't remember specific details in the beginning of the
mm,
story, and
mhm,
one of those things is, like, what happened in the emergency room. A lot of times
mhm,
people will wake up and, I've been at bedside of people that have had massive heart attacks. They didn't
mhm,
make it, we brought them back. They go
mhm,
to cath lab, they go upstairs and they're, like, walking and talking, and I go up there, they have no idea, who I
mhm,
am or anything
mhm,
of what happened,
mm,
and it's our brain's way of protecting us from that,
mhm,
really traumatic event. We'll remember,
mhm,
bits and pieces, but probably not the whole thing. And
mhm,
so it is really nice, just to be honest, when you
mhm,
get to hear stories like this, and it's why I think I'm
mm,
so passionate about, like, having people like yourself on that have been through these traumatic things, not just so that we can bring hope to a situation no matter what you're going through. You're
mhm,
never alone in what you're going through, but also, to give those people an opportunity to know, like, each person matters in that story, like your friend
mhm,
on the boat, every person that was a part of your life during that challenging time made a difference, and I
mhm,
think that, like, the way we show up for people, and actually something I would love to kind of dive into if you're okay with it, is like,
mhm,
the relationship you have with that person that was on the boat with you
mm,
today. I think
mhm,
that actually is a really cool part of your story of, like,
mm,
sometimes when we go through hard things with people and people are, on our with us through that journey, it really strengthens the bond there. So can you
mhm.
talk about, like,
Yeah,
did you know those people very well on the boat that
yeah,
day, and, like, what happened and how did that help or not help your
yeah.
relationship?
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, we didn't know each other that well. Our wives had gotten to know each other a little bit, and so we're building this friendship. We find out we like water skiing together, so that's kind of the, hey, let's go do this together.
Yeah.
And so I learned a word later, because we go through this experience. They're coming to the hospital. You can imagine the weight of being a person who's driving a boat when someone gets hurt. And I always knew from the very beginning it was an accident. It wasn't
Mhm,
intended. There was
mhm.
no foul play. There was no alcohol involved. Like, I was completely free with that. But nonetheless, I could put myself in his shoe and go, the weight, and I could see the weight on that. Literally, when he would
Yeah.
come in the hospital, the weight of that was
Mhm.
destroying him. He
Yeah.
also has a photographic memory. So seeing all my wounds and blood was just very graphic for him. but I saw him fighting for me right away, literally holding my body together. And when sheriffs wanted him to let go so they could start assessing, he said, "I'm not letting go until the nurses or the choppers here," because the helicopter was coming to take
Mhm.
me to a trauma level one hospital. And so I saw him fighting for me. And so that wasn't really an issue for me. I felt free, but I just know the weight of that was so much for him. So I tried to free him up in that. But I also know, like, I was a moron. And one time I thought I'd be funny and he went to give me a hug and I just screamed and pretended I was really hurt. And I thought I was being funny, but it was so dumb because it was like, that was like the wound that he already
Mhm.
had, that he had hurt me, you know? And so I have to ask his forgiveness for this. And we have to have these really hard and awkward conversations about forgiveness, about blame, about medical bills, about counseling, and just different stuff and insurance and all these things that it was like, that's not normally the way friendships develop, right? You
Mhm.
normally don't have
Mhm.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But in hindsight, he's one of my best friends to this day. I love
Mhm.
him dearly. And he's had a huge influence on my life. I know I've had a huge influence on his life. He cared for my kids to that period when they were 10 and 8. Now his kids are in that age. And so I get to do that. Plus my kids and
Mhm.
my family who've been blessed by him, they're like aunts and uncles, he and his wife to my kids. Now we're aunts and uncles to his kids. And so I learned this word, which was trauma bond. And when someone
Mhm.
said that the first time I heard it, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that is. Because our
Mhm.
families have had this experience. And he and I, as friends, have had this experience that is so powerful, exposed us. It exposed all of our fears and grief and anxieties and just forced us into having really uncomfortable but honest conversations. And we had all these opportunities to demonstrate grace to one another and
Mhm.
also to be honest with one another about hard stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
we had a lot of support and great community around us that really helped us do that and step into that. And we made lots of mistakes in it, but he's one of my best friends. And I just can't believe the depth of our relationship. He knows everything about me. I know everything about him. We trust each other with each other's kids, money. We're entrepreneurs together. We're in a small group together. Like it's powerful to see. And I heard a counselor once say the deepest relationships actually have fractures in them. That's normal. Relationships have conflict, fractures, brokenness. The difference between deep long-term relationships are the ones that figure out how are you going to work through those
Mhm.
fractions and the brokenness, the grief, the trauma, the pain, the hurts we do to one another. And it was a light bulb moment for me because I could think about my own marriage, some of my best friends. I could think also about relationships where I haven't dealt with those fractures because I'm being a moron or I'm being stubborn or prideful. And like, that's why our relationship stuck. That's
Yeah.
why it feels like what was a close relationship is no longer. And I have a part in that. But I'm super grateful for this friend. And even though this is one of the worst things that happened in my life, my
Mhm.
wife and I and kids would say, this sounds so weird to say. I can't even believe I say this out loud, but I mean it. It's one of the best things in our life. It's something that
Yeah.
has shaped us, that God has worked in, that He's healed and changed and impacted us. And even this friendship, I don't have many friendships that have that level of depth because
Mhm.
we've gone through such pain together, and we share that.
Yeah. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. Like, how did these challenges in your life influence or shape the way that you approach, life, relationships,
Mhm.
even business today?
Yeah, yeah. You know, a big one is learning to not be productive and receive help. So,
Mm.
first of all, as a man, I feel this innate, I think God put it in me to provide for my family. And in that
Mhm.
moment, I'm sitting in a hospital and I can't provide for my family. I can't go do my work. I
Mhm.
literally can't go to my house and do things around my house. I can't protect my family physically against intruders and the enemy and all the battles I want to fight. I'm literally sitting in a hospital room hooked up to machines and stuff, and I got surgeries tomorrow. And to be honest, Jillian, I felt so helpless and I felt worthless. I felt like I can't even do what I'm meant to do, what I'm supposed to do. And it was embarrassing and shameful and humiliating. And then I had to come through that and go, Lord, what do I do with that? And I had to come back to what is my identity? What is my security?
Mhm.
Who am I? I'm a son of God. I'm his son. I'm
Mhm.
loved. I'm forgiven. And um, I'm still going to provide. I believed, hey, I'm going to figure out how to provide through this or whatever. But for now, I need to be here. What I need to do is receive healing, get these surgeries, get this medicine, get the IV, get the nutrition they wanted to give me, get the therapy I needed. Um, and I need to get through this. And so that sense of letting go, that my identity isn't what I do, is so difficult for me. I know it's difficult probably for everybody, but I know
Oh,
especially for
yeah.
men, we
Big
just
time.
make our identity in what we're doing, and in particular providing. And
Yeah.
then I like helping people. I feel called to that, but I saw the pride that I had in that moment, because I realized that when I can't do that, I feel like less of a person, or shamed or humiliated, rather than just saying, hey, I can't help somebody today. In fact, I need help. Like,
Mhm.
I need people to bring me my medicine, people to help me go to the bathroom, the most
Mhm.
embarrassing minutia of, like, I just need help. I need help getting out of bed. I need help with everything. And it was beautiful. It was painful, but it was beautiful. I had guys from my church come to my house and say,
Mhm.
what's your list? What's the list? We're just going to do honeydew stuff here for the day. I had someone come in, my pastor actually came in and said, someone in the church is anonymous, but they want to pay your mortgage this month. And I wept and was so
Wow.
humbled by that. And at first I couldn't receive it. And he's like, would you just receive this gift? Just please receive this gift. And I did. And there was something that was changing in me when I realized I can accept help, that's good.
Mhm.
Being connected to people in healthy community is about giving, but also receiving the help that you need. And then even asking for help. I had to ask for tons of help in the years to come. So let me apply that to business, because you asked, what does
Yeah.
this mean for
Yeah.
business? So I think, two things I've learned in business, and I work now in real estate investments. So we help increase the joy of real estate investing. That's our passion. But here's how I'd connect these things to work. One thing would be realizing I'm not my identity isn't in the work or the success of it. My identity in work is to make sure I'm serving people and doing what's right and well by them. And whether things are going well or bad on a particular day, or the client's happy or customers happy or not, take joy in serving and doing the work, and being really honest and investing. Thankfully in our work, we do a niche that's very safe and low risk, but there's always risk and sometimes things go wrong. And so being honest with that, which is hard, is really helpful. And so disconnecting the identity, instead staying focused on service and telling people the truth. And then I would
Mhm.
say the other thing is just learning how to ask help. I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs who are listeners, and one of the hardest things for people when they go self-employed and are entrepreneurs is asking for help, because we want to do
Yes.
everything. We think in our pride, I can do this better than anybody, and we can't do everything. In fact, now what I've learned the last few years about entrepreneurship is it's really about building a great team with aligned vision, and helping people, your employees, your teammates, be successful and productive. So that sense of, I don't have to do everything, but I can ask for help, that really translated well for me in business. And I'm trying to reconnect it in my brain. Instead of, that's bad, I'm not going to do something, or I can't do something, or I'm going to ask for help or let someone else do it, that's actually amazing. There's something
Mhm.
wonderful about that, right?
Mm.
And when
Oh,
I
yeah.
let a nurse or a doctor or someone who can come to my house and when I let them come and do the thing that they're qualified to do and they want to give, that's amazing. It's a gift to me. I need help. It's a gift to them, because that's what they're
Mhm.
wired and called to do. So having
Yeah.
more joy in that, and seeing how teams work well together when they do their best stuff, and those would be some of the things that I learned through that for business.
Yeah, and that I think that's so important, and also, like, it sounds so easy when you say it, but I think it's actually one of the hardest things. Correct me if I'm wrong for you, but, like,
So hard.
I think what I've seen, from conversations and my own personal life, it is one of the hardest things to do is like actually let go of control, right?
Yeah.
Where like we want to feel like we have control over every little thing in our life. And the truth
Yeah.
is, just like the fact that you were in that accident, right? Like life is here and we are a part of this journey, but actually don't have full control. And when we let go of that, sometimes like that's when our gifts actually show up.
Mhm.
Um, and, you have also, I'm navigated this through your marriage, right? Like, I'm sure there's
Mhm.
been ups and downs in your marriage. And how did you navigate these challenges? And
Mhm.
how did your family work together
Yeah.
to stay strong and grow through those challenging
Yeah.
experiences?
Yeah. Yeah. My wife shares this, so she shares this publicly. So I know she would be fine with me sharing this, but we each had something we were kind of praying for and working on our life right before this accident. And for her, it was courage. She was asking God to help give her courage. And for me, it was passion. I felt like my life was getting in this routine and rote,
Mhm.
and our kids were little and we're trying to do the right things, but you get in this like, every day, it feel like Groundhog Day kind of thing. And I'm like, Lord, that's not the way I want to live. I want passion. We would both say God answered that prayer through really painful ways through this, but he absolutely did. She would say this, she would talk about control. She would say, she describes herself as worst case Wanda, like trying to think of the worst things that are going to happen and then trying to control and prevent them. So she had kind of contingency plans in her head for all these bad things that could happen to our family. But me getting run over by a boat wasn't on that. Like
No.
she didn't have a plan for that, right? That wasn't on her
No.
list, right? And all of a sudden, I'm not at home. She's essentially living like a single mom in our house. Plus, she has to drive to the hospital every day. I mean, she had to do really courageous things. And I was so hopped up on opioids and in so much pain
Mm,
that even significant medical decisions, for example, the doctor saying, we need to move a muscle so your leg works. We're going to rebuild your leg, and you need to pick one of the three muscles. Well,
mm.
I was like, Mindy, you got to decide. I'm not the guy. Whatever, I just tell the doctor, and they kind of figured this out pretty quick. Whatever she says, that's what you're going to do. So she developed this amazing courage, but not in a way I think that we would want, because we want things to happen or prayers to be answered in ways that are comfortable and fun and we
Uh-huh,
really
yeah.
like, right?
Yep.
And this was not what we would choose, but she was so courageous. The decisions she made, the things she did, the way she decided for my leg. Here's just one fun example. She brought in a picture. I had done a obstacle mud race a few years before, and she just liked this picture of me. She thought it looked tough or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool, great, that's your picture. And so she brought that in and she put it on the wall. And every time doctors would ask a decision, she'd say, he wants to do that and get back to that. Which
Wow.
muscle, which decision, which plan gets there? Because that's what he
Wow.
wants. That's what I want as his wife.
How
That's what we
smart.
want. That's what my kid. It was amazing. Plus, it
Yeah.
put this vision in front of me. I had lost weight. I was all janky looking and weird. And it gave this vision of get back to strength, get back to movement, get back to activity. And I needed that for my physical therapy. So I'm just so proud, grateful for her.
Wow.
Um, Particularly in our marriage, we just had to learn how to be more honest with each other. She demonstrated a ton of grace to me. I had to with her as well. Um, I have one. Do you have time for one little funny story related to this about
Please.
our marriage?
Oh, we
So,
have time. We're here.
okay,
We're here for
okay.
it.
So we're driving to go to a doctor's appointment, and she's driving because I'm still on opioids, and I had this big old truck at the time, this giant truck, and for some reason the truck breaks down right near where as we're getting near the office of this doctor, and we're on a freeway. So we pull off. I was like, just pull off. And she kind of pulls off and pulls over, but we're right on a freeway kind of exit ramp or whatever. Like, and anyways, the first car that pulls over to help is a big truck of landscapers. So big, burly dudes that are landscapers, right? And they're like, hey, we're going to help you. This is awesome. And they see her and they, whatever. They're like, yeah, let's help the pretty girl. And, but then they see me, I'm sitting in the passenger seat, right? And they go, hey, we're gonna push, and it's so heavy we're on an uphill that they're trying and they need one more person to push. So they come over and tell me, hey, come help us push, right? And my wife says, no, I'm going to push. He's going to drive the steering wheel. And she tries to kind of explain like he's injured, blah, 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 but they don't get it. All they see is this guy hopping the steering wheel and making his little wife go out and push the car, right? And she didn't take time to explain. She's like, this is what we're doing, guys. Okay. I'm pushing and he's steering. Okay. And they look at me and they say some words in another language. And I know what they're saying. It's not good words. They don't think highly of me. They think very bad things about me. Right.
Oh
And
my
they're
gosh.
saying them out loud. And I just was so proud of her. She's like, I'm just going to go push it. And so, anyways, there's the kind of things we had to kind of deal with is flips of roles and,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. And we just got to know each other. And it was certainly challenging. We obviously had conflict and pain and suffering in the midst of that. But I'd say the most profound thing that our counselors, some good friends who do marriage counseling and counseling, said to us and still say to us when we go to them with grief and suffering, they say, you have the choice as whether suffering is going to be constructive, productive, or destructive. You have suffering and you'd love to choose to not have it. You can't choose that. You got suffering. So that's there. Deal with that. But now what you can control and choose you can let that suffering be productive in your life, or you can let it be destructive. And particularly in marriage, they would say,
Wow.
are you going to let, if your marriage design is to be one, united and aligned, then is this suffering going to take you apart, or is it going to bring you together and more aligned and more one in this? Specifically, that's the productivity that suffering can do in marriage. And that's
Yes.
blown my mind every time I've heard it. And that was our experience, is not perfectly, but overall, this suffering was productive in our life. It got us aligned. It got us clear about what was important. And in some ways, it cleared the deck of my life and my business the way it was. And we got to kind of rebuild life. And I got to rebuild a new business with like a clean slate. And that was a painful gift, but it really was a gift.
Wow, I think everybody needs to go back and rewind that and, like, write that quote on their bathroom mirror. I think that is I'm gonna remember that one too, constructive, productive, or destructive. That's really, really good and a really good thing to ask yourself, if, you're listening and going through a challenge right now.
Mhm,
We get to choose, is it gonna be constructive, productive, or destructive in our
mhm,
lives?
mhm,
And I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of truth that we're willing to dive into about the
mhm,
situation, like looking in the mirror and working on things together and being truthful with how you really feel and what you really need, and having those people to encourage you.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that was really cool of your wife, to have that picture. And really, like, when we don't believe in ourselves, when we have built the relationships around us to have other people believe in us when we
Mhm,
don't, I
mhm,
think that is just like so powerful, and why people need community.
mhm,
Because we're human beings. Like, we're all gonna have days where we, have those low times, and it's hard to pick yourself back up, no matter how hard. And so,
mhm,
I mean, that was beautiful. Did you always have a good community around you, or was that something that you worked hard to have, or
mhm.
how did that come about? Like,
Yeah.
I have so many questions to ask you because I want to go
Mm,
into like the business too, but I think,
mhm.
there's going to be a lot of people listening that, they're like, well, I don't have a small group. And,
Yeah.
like, my relationships right now in my life are hard, and I actually
Mhm,
feel really lonely right now.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. I've felt so lonely in life at times, certainly in junior high, and even going into high school, that would be my number one feeling.
Mm,
And, I think your question is, how did community happen for you guys, right? That's kind of your
yeah.
question? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'd say there's two amazing sources, maybe three. One is faith community. So in high school, I got involved with an organization called Young Life. It's a Christian outreach, and it became community really quick,
Hmm.
friendship. And one of the distinctives of Young Life is helping kids see that the good life that everybody's looking for is actually what God's designed us for. Jesus said, "I've come that they might have life and have it abundantly." And Young Life, the culture of Young Life, is good at saying, "We believe that's true, and we want to show you." So we want to play and go to camp and play games and laugh and have food and have community. So that taught me a ton. And that wasn't something I pursued or even knew. That's just was a gift to me. I got welcomed into that community, and I'm
Hmm.
so thankful for that. And so to this day, our faith community is a huge part of it. Our church, we just try and be
Hmm.
connected, and we believe they're our family. We've been giving as much as we can. And then in that season, we just received. They brought
Yeah.
meals to our house. They brought gift cards. Those were the guys that came to my house and did the handyman. Those were the people that paid our mortgage. People said, "Hey, what can I help with work? I'll work for you for free. Tell me what needs to get done." I mean, my mind was blown. I'm like, when does this happen? And
Yeah.
someone had asked a family member, what's the plan? How does the church do that? And their answer was amazing. They said, when God's changed your life and shown you how much he loves you, that fills your cup in a way now you can give and just live that way. It's not really a
Mhm.
playbook. It's more like a changed life just does that?
Yeah.
So I'd say faith community is huge.
Mhm.
The other I would say is one of our mentors early on told us right when we were new married, said, you need to find some really good friends, some couples, and just be committed to them for the rest of your life. And our mentors had done that. They had kind of like 4 or 5 couples that had just been together since they were married, just like walking in life together. And so honestly, I didn't even really understand that or believe how important that was. I just kind of did it because I just knew my
Mhm.
mentor, like I just did it. We did it. And so that group, we do trips together every year, couples trip. The guys, we do a golf trip. The girls do this stuff. We have dinners. We're at each other's, family funerals and baptisms, and we just are committed to each other. And that was some of the best advice I would tell any young married
Wow.
couple, really anybody. There's something about being faithful. And I think often we look at friendships as, what do I get out of it? Or is this person awesome? Or they treat me well right now? Instead of saying, kind of like marriage, a commitment, I'm committed to you, right? I'm in. I'm in. And of course, I want to pick a relationship that has good chemistry, fun, all that kind of stuff. But we go through tough seasons, and those friendships aren't always fun. And people go through tough stuff, and I'm not always loving them well. They're not always loving me well. But there's this commitment that's like, I'm lifelong friends with you. And so those couples, they're just life to us. Our kids have become best friends. Like I said, we just have walked with each other through this stuff. When I'm in that boat accident, one of the guys is an EMT firefighter, and so my wife's on the phone. What should we do? Right? I've done
Mhm,
this. What else do
mhm,
we? And he's asking like triage and EMT medical questions.
mhm.
And she's like, I felt so much comfort that he's asking me these questions, and I know him and trust him. And whatever he would have told me in that moment, I just know he has our best interest at heart. What a gift to our family,
Yeah.
Um, and those were some of the guys that stayed overnight with me in the hospital when I was struggling and just pain and just wrestling with stuff. And so that faithful friend group would be the second part of it. And then um, I would say the third is in work. I've found communities for me, faith, work, integration. So my faith and work, that's been a big area. I just have been fascinated, one to learn and grow in. And so I've found a group in Phoenix that's all about that. And we have a small group that meets.
Mm.
And again, there's this commitment level. I've been in this group 11 years. And one of the missions of the group is to develop lifelong friendships of virtue, so not just transactional, but like virtue. We are aligned in our faith and our values for our marriage, and our family, and our parenting, and our own health, that these are friendships of virtue. We care about the same thing. And so we meet every Wednesday, and we just are
Wow.
faithful with that. And we do stuff together, trips, and then we do these. And I'm just so grateful for that. And it's so costly. Like there's times, Wednesday morning, it's like, oh gosh, I got to get up early. I got to skip this thing to go do this thing. But I've learned enough times that cost is worth paying, because the
Mhm.
blessing of that community and friendship, being known, to use the language you say so well, Jillian, to be known and to know. And for men, most men aren't really naturally strong at that, right? You ladies are just naturally, inherently so much better at that. Men, we struggle. And I think having some structure, having a group, having a bit of an agenda. One of the things we do, I think you'll like this, when we meet weekly, is very quickly we try and get to what we call the top five and the bottom five. And whereas most men talk about everything in the middle, our golf game and the sports we
Mhm,
like and all this stuff, we're
mhm.
good at that. How's business going? What's the new truck you have or whatever, like hunting, we're good at all that stuff. But that's not really the top five and the bottom five, right? The top five and the bottom five is the most awful, the things I fear the most, my biggest areas of shame or disappointment. And the top five are my biggest dreams, my biggest passions, the things I'm most
Mm.
excited about. And it's the emotions behind that that's these outliers. So we literally have to retrain ourselves as men. Okay, get rid of all the middle stuff. Let's go right to the top and the bottom. And we don't let guys share. We set a timer, which sounds funny, but it sounds dumb to most women. They're like, why do you set a timer? Here's how we have to set a timer. Guys will tell the story forever, right? They'll just be on
Yeah.
telling the story forever. And by the timer, when the timer goes off, you have to wrap it up and you have to say, what's the emotion? What is the
Oh,
emotion? What are you really feeling behind this? And we
this is
literally have
the
an emotion. We
best.
literally have an emotion wheel. So this colored wheel, and this is how men are like, break it down for us, right? And so instead of saying I'm angry or I'm happy, under anger, there's 30 or 40 specific emotions. Under happiness, there's 30 or 40 specifically things. And you can't say angry or happy. You have to go to the deep and specific
Yes.
ones, because it
Thank
tells you
you. I
so
love
much
it.
more about what's going on, right? So we
Yes.
literally have this discipline with a timer. I know it sounds so dumb, but it
No, it doesn't
works.
at
It
all.
gets us talking about what's top and bottom and the emotion. And I'll tell you what, I feel so known there. And I know these guys. And so, you talk about when tough things come, how are you going to get through it? For all of us, I know for the men I meet with, that's the thing. It's like we know each other. We're talking about the emotion, the real part of it. And we have similar values and kind of directions. So we
Mhm,
can remind
mhm.
each other, hey, you value this. You believe in this, right? This is a core conviction for you about marriage or parenting. So, buddy, man up. Like, remember, this is what and we need that.
Yep.
So I would say, to answer your question about community, that's been the place. In a sense, it's a gift. But I think when you get those opportunities, you got to really lean in. And I've just seen the fruit of having a long-term commitment to relationships. And then for men, uh, obviously men like doing stuff together. So hiking, playing sports, that's fine. That's good stuff. And sometimes that's how you can get to the deeper part. But if you don't get to what's really going in your life, the top or the bottom, then men and people just will have shallow relationships. We just talk
Yes.
about whatever, this
Mhm.
thing, and
Yeah.
I'm not really known and I don't
The
really
next
know
football
them.
game.
And it
Mhm.
takes so much work to get to this top five and bottom five. But once you do it, now it's a habit for me. We get together on Wednesday mornings. We did it this morning. We hit the timer and we just start going around. What's the top five and the bottom five? And it's like now that it's a habit and we
Mhm.
trust each other and we know the goodness of it, we can get there super quick. We're into it.
I
We're talking about the top five and the bottom five real fast.
This has been probably the best answer I've ever heard, on building community, like, hands down,
Mm,
and I think that this is really important for everybody to listen to, and I don't think it's just for men, I think this is for everybody out there because I think that in the society that we live in today, I say this a lot, but I'm just gonna say it again because I think it's important to just be aware of, like, there's constant things that take up our time and our energy, and then there's things that are important, and if we're not going to that deeper level with the people in our lives, then everything is superficial, and that's the reason why you feel so lonely. And so taking these actual strategies that you just gave us, I think is super important. Like take this home and actually practice this with your friends. Like build that community that is not just a superficial like, "Oh, did you see the game on Sunday?" No. Like life is not about just the game. Like life is about like what's going on in the surface or I mean, what's going on beneath the surface
yeah.
because truly we are never alone in what we're going through and there is people that actually want to help but we have to
Hmm.
let go right
Hmm.
and dive a little bit deeper
Yeah.
so just oh my goodness I'm just so grateful for that
Mm,
I want to turn the conversation because I also want you have so much knowledge in what you do in like real estate and investing and I think, you know, one of the most common problems that people are struggling with, especially today, is finances, right? Like,
mm,
and I think that you have a lot of, you know, just knowledge on this and you've learned, you've built, you've been successful. And so I kind of want to dive into that and maybe we talk like passive income, like
okay.
what are some practical steps someone can take to start generating
Yeah.
some of that? Like what are the things you've learned? I know that's kind of a general question, but we can kind of
Yeah.
just dive in from there.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Um, I'll step back to like the best overall finance in a sentence I've ever heard. This is helpful for
Mhm.
me. It's basically this: the formula for financial health is to spend less than you make and
Mhm.
invest the difference.
Mm.
I'll say it again. The formula to build financial health, strength, is spend less than you make and invest the difference. It's kind of that simple at the high level. Obviously, it gets more complex as life goes on and different stuff. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying I really think at the 30,000 foot level, looking high
Mhm.
at our finances, that's the key. Can I do that? Now, to passive income, this is a big passion of mine, and it some of this came out of the boat accident time because
Yeah.
right after this boat accident, right, I am on opioid medicine. I'm really struggling with withdrawal and physical dependency issues, and I couldn't drive and I couldn't do my work. So I had to say, how do I create income streams that will get me through this season? And in real estate, I had done what's called equity, which is where you own the real estate, right? What a lot of people think of in real estate is let me buy
Mhm.
the real estate and own the real estate. And when things go well, that's a bigger upside. But when you own the real estate, you have tenants, toilets, you have a ton of work and risk. And when the value of the properties go down, because properties go up and down, when they go down, the equity gets hammered really hard. So by equity, what I mean is you're the owner and you have the down payment. What most people think but don't realize you can do as investment is there's a lender on that property, right? So your listeners who own a house, if you have a loan on that property, there's a lender. They're in the debt position. And simply put, here's the thing I would boil passive income down to in real estate. Real estate debt, being the lender, is the best place to be. It's the most peaceful. It's the least amount of anxiety.
Mhm.
It's the
Mhm.
most predictable kind of income. Because think about it this way: when the value drops on real
Mhm.
estate, as long as the loan is smaller than the value, that doesn't affect the loan. That's why lenders can lend, like when rates used to be 3%. That's why you could get 3% because it's more secure position. Well, we
Mhm.
do a type of lending. that's called hard money lending, and it actually can generate income for investors up to 10% because it's short-term, higher interest loans that experienced investors like fix and flip borrowers will borrow. So simply put, what I've learned is that being in a debt position is really safe and peaceful. And as a lender, we make interest every day of the year. So even weekends and holidays, investors in a lending position get to have that passive, secure income.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. I mean, some people will probably have to go like Google some of those words. But you did break it down. I mean, my husband is in or used to do mortgage as well. He still does some of the stuff. But so it makes sense to me. I want to talk about also like why someone would so you kind of answered it, but, like, if we're investing, is do we need to have, like, a certain amount of money saved be in order to get to a rental property? Because you said spend less than you make and then invest the
Mhm.
difference.
Yeah,
What if my difference is only $10,000? What do I do?
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
let's just speak to everybody. There's
yeah, yeah.
some people on here listening, they have, lots of money, and some people are just starting out.
Yeah, yeah. I'll start at the smallest level. My daughter, when she started her very first job, to save for her car, she started working at
Mhm,
15. In Arizona, you start working at 15. So right away at 15, she wanted to save for her car because we told her we'll pay half. So immediately I said, honey, we're opening an IRA for you, a Roth IRA, and from your paycheck, a certain amount of money is going to deposit in there automatically right away. And it started
mhm,
with just 20 bucks. So it's a tiny amount.
mhm. Yeah,
But I'll tell you this, she's now 20, so this is 5 years ago. She's been working and saving. We made that proportional to her income as it grew over time. And she now sees that the income, literally what she makes every month from that, is more than one of her first paychecks. So because
wow.
she's been investing just 5 years, she's just 20 years old, but she now has an amount in an IRA that what that
Mhm.
generates, the yield on that every month is more than one of her very first paychecks. So she now is a believer and she can see this. And what I told her is, we're going to get your money working for you. So, honey, you're going to go work and earn some money, but your money is your little employees, and we're going to put them to work. If you spend it all, you don't have any more employees left. You get
Ooh,
to
I love
spend
that.
some, you get to spend some, but you're going to put some every month into saving. And that's making your money be little employees for you, a little money machine. Does that sound good? And she's like, yeah, that sounds cool. But now she sees it. And I show her those numbers. And now she's a starving college student just trying to find food sometimes on a Friday night, right? But she can now connect it. And I remind her a couple times a year, let's look at the statement. Let's see what that is. So you can start
Yeah,
small and get that going. The next level, I would say, is your 401k matching for people at work. If you have a matching type account, you should be maxing that out.
okay.
Absolutely, really powerful. And then you can take those IRAs and you can self-direct them. So even once you have the fund that we do in hard money is $50,000 minimum. So people have 50,000, they can start with that.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
you can even do some things before that and prior. One thing I really recommend young people do early is buy their first house as soon as they can. So my son did this. I'm so proud of him. He bought his first house at 20. At 20 years old,
Wow.
he bought a house with his own income on himself with a mortgage. We didn't co-sign for it. He did it. Now, we did have some rentals that we were able to help him buy one of those rentals in a way that got him better terms and stuff, but he qualified for the mortgage completely on his own. And I'm really proud that he did that. What some young people, so buy a house, and if people can keep their houses, and when you buy a next house, which takes a little extra work and thinking, that's often a really powerful strategy.
Yeah,
That's the equity position that builds growth,
right.
but it has more risk. And usually, once people have some growth, then you want to convert that to more stable and passive income. So, for example, like the real estate debt fund we do is a way to kind of convert some of that growth to income. But one other house story that people might find inspiring, or maybe parents who are listening, there's a specific type of property called a multi property. So, like a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, 2 or 3 or 4 units. And young people can buy those with an FHA home, which your husband would be an expert on this. It's a first time home buyer loan, easy to get, small down payment. And what they do with a multiplex is they count the rents. So someone's going, wait a minute, I'm going to live in one and rent out 3 units. And what you can qualify for is really powerful. And then you just have to live in it 6 months. And then you can move to a different house and keep that as an investment property. So that's a powerful strategy for young people just getting started, or maybe somebody who's in a market where they go, I'm struggling to qualify to buy a house. Maybe take a look at a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, because if you're a first time home buyer, that can really open some doors for some people.
Yeah, and I want to just be clear here because I think, social media will lead us to believe that like we need the best looking house and you got to decorate it a certain way and you got to have all these nice things and like all and it like just came out of thin air. Like I feel
Mhm,
like that's what people will lead you to believe, right?
mhm,
And so when we're saying like, "Oh, this 20-year-old is buying a house,"
mhm,
like, is this house the one that, like, you live in, or is
mhm,
this
mhm.
like a small house that
Yeah,
might not even be in the
yeah,
area that he ends up
yeah,
wanting to be in? Like,
yeah,
what does this actually look like? Because I think it's
yeah.
important for people to understand that too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, and we have expectations of a home from when we grew up or social media or
Yes.
TV shows,
Yes.
and I
Uh-huh.
think, what I counsel young people who are buying a house is just buy a house, just get in, and it might be the dumpiest, smallest looking house, like I tell them about my first house because when
Mhm.
my wife and I got married, what we could afford in Arizona was 92,000, and it made her cry when I showed her stuff because she lived in a big, beautiful home that her dad had built 50 years ago, and it was gorgeous, and she's like, "Whoa, this is hard to wrap my brain around, you know?"
Yeah.
Um, but in hindsight, we're super grateful for that house. We fixed it up over time with help from our parents, literally some money and some, sweat equity. And then that house helped us buy our next house. And then eventually, we're in our house now, which is like our dream house. But that first house was tiny. It wasn't in the neighborhood I would have picked. It was older. It had this weird story of this bad thing that had kind of happened in the house before, but it was the cheap and it was the house we could afford. So it was like, let's
Mhm.
just do it. And in hindsight, we now that little house that was kind of dumpy became a home for us. It's where our
Mhm.
son was born, and we have these really fond memories of our family being in that home. We converted something that was dumpy into our home that we loved and we're really grateful for. Um, Another example, I have an employee who just bought his first house. He's 22 ish. And it's a little further from his ideal area want to be. It's a little smaller. It's a patio home, so connected to other homes. But I'm so excited for him, and he's glad and grateful he got into his first house. So yeah, I think you're onto something important, Jillian. Young people need to kind of just go, my goal is just to get into a house. And
Mhm.
your first house, it might be smaller, the location might be different. It might be a condo or a townhome. It might not have a garage. It might not be pretty, but just getting into home ownership, so many studies have been done on this. The difference that makes to your financial health 10 to 20 years later, it's one of the biggest game changers. People who buy a house early and people don't, it's a major game changer. And it's really a great place to start. And a lot of young people just think it isn't possible. But if they stay out of debt or pay off their debt, spend less than they're making, it doesn't
Mhm.
take a huge down payment with like a FHA type loan. And sometimes it's help from family members. There's lots of ways to do this. But they young people can buy houses. They just have to. So I teach my kids and any young person I can speak to, start planning at 14 to buy a house, which means get some good credit. Like I got my daughter a credit card in her name, her credit card, pay it off every month, learn to use responsible credit, learn to spend less than you make and invest the difference. She's well on track to buy a house when she graduates from college. She's in a good place to do. But you got to kind of start thinking about that years earlier, because if you use
Mhm.
credit card debt, if you spend more than you make and you get in credit card debt, it's going to stop you from buying a house. If
Yep.
you don't figure out how to get a job and a W-2 income, it's not going to happen. If you don't save up
Yeah.
a little bit of money, it's not going to happen. So you got to kind of get ahead of this and value it and believe that that's important for your life long term.
Yeah. Well, I also know, and you're so good at it, but you're very passionate also about mentoring others and helping them kind of find their own unique abilities. What advice would you give to those looking to grow personally and professionally right now and maybe struggling?
Yeah. So kind of in the unique ability type department.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's such a great word, unique ability. I really love it. I think about it a lot. And I would say it's this. A friend of mine does this career counseling where he helps people learn how they're wired. And kind of like your house thing, we get on social media or we go places and see, and we always compare. We look at
Mhm.
people and go, I wish I was like that person. I wish I was talented like that. And it's a waste of energy and it's very destructive to compare and want to be somebody or not. My biggest advice would be this: get to know how God made you. What are you good at? What do you like? And how do you work? Because here's what I absolutely know to be true: God's made every person, He's gifted and given every person some gifts and skills and interests and unique things about them. And so the mission isn't become who you want to be. The mission is be who you are meant to be, get to
Mm.
know what those things look like. And there's tests that can help you with that. But I really think just working and being part of stuff, whether you're volunteering or whether you're getting paid, when you work and use your gifts, you start figuring out, what am I good at? What am I not good at? What do I like? And what do I don't like? And ask people for feedback, right? Ask your bosses, ask your teachers, ask your coaches, ask your friends, ask your parents, ask your aunts and uncles, what am I good at? And when, so instead of comparing, just say, and what's funny is when people take these tests, instead of being grateful for what they're good at, they look at what they're not good at and they say, oh, I want to get better at those things. And this counselor I follow goes, nope, don't do that. Don't spend any energy on the thing you're not wired in.
Mhm.
Instead, look at what your strengths are, go after that like crazy. And then the things you're not good at, this is the key. And kind of back to the entrepreneurship conversation, ask for help, find
Mm.
someone else, ask someone. Now, sometimes we just got to do something, right? My wife asked me to take out the trash. I can't say, hey, that's not my unique ability, whatever. I'm taking out the trash. Okay. We got to take out the trash. Okay.
Oh,
But
darn.
I shouldn't do, I shouldn't be a plumber, for example, because I'm not good at plumbing. It's just not a good use of my energy long term. So the more we can do what we're good at, and that takes a lot of iterations. We don't find the perfect job when we're 20. Nobody does. I don't
Mm-mm.
have the perfect job. You don't, right? Like we don't get the perfect jobs, but if we learn who we are and move towards using those strengths and then ask for help with the weaknesses, whether that's hire it out, whether that's ask a friend for help, whether it's ask somebody in your company or your team or your sports team, ask for help. I'm not good at this. I'm struggling. Ask for help. And there's a book, you might have read this, but it's Who, Not How. Instead of trying to
Mm.
figure out how to do stuff, who's good at this? Just ask them for help. And that little
Yes.
brain change is so powerful. Asking who can help me with this? And that way, the more, and I actually lead my team in our real estate investment team, the more our team can do what their unique ability is, the better our whole team's going to thrive. And so, what things can either someone else do on our team who's good at, or what things should we outsource or ask for help outside of our team? Because the more we each get in that role, the more productive our team is, the more joyful our team is, the more we love serving one another. And again, that's in balance with sometimes we just got to do the hard stuff, right? All
Yeah,
right. Sometimes you just
it's
got to do what gets it done.
absolutely.
But over the long run, that works in the short term when you're like an emergency or you just got to get something done. Over the long run, to ask anyone to do something they're not passionate about and they're not good at, it's not a good use of anybody's energy, right? It's just not
Mhm.
going to be helpful to the whole team. So we hold those in tension. We serve and do the hard things, but we also continually move towards using our unique abilities. And that's both what we're good at and we love, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of the top quadrant.
yeah. Yeah, it's good. So I wanna know what's next for you and your work with Kink Loans Funds, and then how can listeners connect with you and learn more about all the real estate strategies that you do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We just continue to love getting to serve people, increase their joy in real estate investing. So we just want to meet more people that are interested in learning about that or that want passive income. And our fund can both help people grow money through a compounding strategy or deliver just literally monthly direct deposit, like mailbox money, right? Like just every month that money deposits in your account. So we're just looking for more people who are interested in that. We want to scale and grow that. People can connect with us at our website, klinkfunds.com. That's KLINK and then funds, FUNDS.com. That's the best way to connect with
Perfect.
us.
Well, I love that. This has just been super, I just feel like we've talked about, like, the secrets to getting more in your life, the struggles that we deal with underneath, and we've also just really dove deep on some strategies. So this has just been super fun, really helpful, and, I really just appreciate you sharing all this with
Mhm.
us. It's been great.
Thanks, Jillian. I love your passion to help people live fuller lives, really be authentic in that. And you're modeling that. And I'm just excited for you and for your listeners.
Yeah, well, everybody go connect. What is the best place to is it on the website to connect with you, John, or
Yeah, yeah, they can book time if they just want to
okay.
have a conversation. They can request info on our fund. So both links are
Okay.
there at
Okay.
klinkfunds.com. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, to everyone listening, I hope this conversation has really sparked some ideas and motivation for you to take bold steps towards your goals, whether it's in business, your personal life, or just navigating life's challenges. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who could use a little inspiration. And don't forget to subscribe to Life Without Secrets for more empowering conversations. Remember, every setback can be a setup for something greater when you choose to grow through it. Until next time, take care and keep striving for the life you truly want. Hey there, it's Jillian from Life Without Secrets. Ever feel like you and your partner aren't quite on the same page? Well, you're not alone, and that's exactly why I created our latest issue of Truthful magazine. It's packed with insights and stories about bridging that gap and finding a deeper connection. We're diving into real conversations about needs, feelings, and how honest dialogue can rekindle that closeness that you've been missing. Why not explore this together? Go grab your free copy right now at lifewithoutsecrets.com and turn those pages into shared moments. Can't wait for you to dive in and share your thoughts with me.